Welcome to the haunted tales from the old rocking chair. And now your host, Christina Spencer.
Well, hello there. Come on in and get cozy by the fireplace. Let me get settled into my old rocking chair and I'll tell you a couple stories. Haunting stories. Stories that are not for the faint of heart. Some of these stories may not be about hauntings per se, but nonetheless will haunt you. Because after all, some of the most scary things in life are not ghosts and demons, but the people we cross on the street. If you're brave enough, keep listening. If not, get up and leave now because you'll never be the same. Don't say I didn't warn you. Welcome to the haunting stories from the old rocking chair. Ticks, written by Astrophile. I never liked bugs. I always tolerated them for my sister's sake. Being the older brother meant I had to be on the bug squashing duty. My sister Charlie didn't stand a chance against the terrifying spiders and earwigs that infested our shared bedroom. Though bug squashing was a treacherous ordeal, I didn't mind being the strong one. I liked helping my sister when she was in trouble. After she died, I didn't think it was my favorite thing to do anymore. Charlie was 2 years younger than me. My mom used to say we were attached to the hip and that we spent all our time together. Even with our contrasting interests, we always seemed to find time to play outside with each other. We used to run around my grandpa's farm without a care in the world. For some background, my dad left us when we were just babies. Mom took my sister and I to live with Grandpa, and to be honest, it was one of the best things that happened to us. We got to do whatever we wanted out there. Charlie and I were free when we were outside. We got to pretend we were anything, from knights fighting terrifying dragons to raiders of lost jewels scouted around the property. We seemed to have a pretty overactive imaginations, but with overactive imaginations come disbeliefs. I remember one time we thought someone was watching us from the tree line. A tall figure with grotesque-looking features just waiting to prey on two innocent kids. Charlie ran to my mom and told her about the figure. Turns out it was only a skinny pine tree my grandpa was planning to cut down. However, it didn't stop Charlie from crying wolf to my mom every time she saw something out of the ordinary. Every time Charlie saw something she thought wasn't right was another time my mom just stopped trusting her and thought it was all a joke. The day of Charlie's accident was one of those days. We had been playing in the woods behind the farmhouse when we found a little bird in the bush. It must have fallen out of the nest and landed on the ground. Charlie had always loved animals, so when she said she wanted to be the one to pick up the baby, I didn't hesitate to let her be the hero for once. She bent down, picked up the baby, brushed it off, and stood on her tippy toes to put it back in the nest. She had to go deep into the bush to reach the bird's nest, and when she was done, she seemed really proud of herself. Her eyes looked like they had stars in them. When we went back home, we took our shoes off and put them by the door. Charlie walked into the living room and sat on the couch as I went to tell my mom we had come back. That's when I heard the loudest scream come from the living room. My mom and I frantically ran to Charlie's aid. Grandpa bolted into the kitchen from the backyard as we made it to her side. Charlie was crying, saying she saw a bug crawling on her t-shirt. Since we lived in the country, it wasn't out of the ordinary for bugs to latch onto your clothes when we came in from outside, but she was beside herself at this one. She said it was small and had 6 legs. My mom, Grandpa, and I just shrugged off her terror, told her to take a shower and it would be okay in the morning. When we got into bed that night, Charlie was just as frightened as she was when she first heard about the bug. I told her everything would be fine and we could go see what happened to the baby bird in the morning. I like to think that made her happy. What came next brought her so much pain. In the morning, I woke up to Mom, Grandpa, and Charlie sitting in the kitchen with Grandpa pulling something off Charlie's arm. It looked like a little coin. It squirmed and wiggled within the tweezers Grandpa held. I learned later it was a tick. A big one, too, almost the size of a dime. The thing still had some of my sister's skin hanging out from its little pincers. Charlie refused to go outside that day. When I asked her why, she said she had a headache and was scared of what might come after her. I thought she was being ridiculous and decided to just play video games instead of going outside. Later that night, Charlie wasn't doing much better. The bite she had earlier had gotten red and swollen. She didn't look okay at all, and the headache she had spread around the whole back of her head. Again, my mom thought she was just overreacting. She did nothing to help my sister's pain but give her an ice pack and a Motrin for her headache. Within the next week, the bite had gotten an ugly ring around it, and Charlie became a recluse. The last time we'd been outside was the day she got the tick, and the lack of adventure seemed to get to her. The number of movies we watched that had to do with some sort of crusade was insane, and even I, an adventure lover, just wanted to watch a rom-com. The nights were the worst, though. The fatigue she had during the day went away as soon as night fell. Charlie just would not sleep. She seemed to be paranoid, unable to process what was happening. She was always asking me to check the sheets before she got into bed. One night, I woke up to her sitting in her bed, rocking back and forth, whispering, "Tick, tick, tick." She began frantically scratching her body furiously. I was terrified, and I didn't know what to do. My sister wasn't herself anymore, and I was frightened to see what she had become from such a little insect bite. That was the night we took her to the hospital. We waited in the waiting room for hours. Mom, Grandpa, Charlie, and I practically slept in the hospital that night, until finally the nurse called our family to the room. Charlie got checked by the doctor. He examined her thoroughly and came to the conclusion that she had contracted Lyme's disease from the tick bite. That little creature gave my sister an incurable disease. She had been suffering for a week from helping a baby bird back into its nest. The disease, the doctor said, didn't kill, but my sister would be incurable. I read somewhere that out of 100,000 people diagnosed and affected, only about 700 people died. Charlie must have been 701. She passed away a few weeks after going to the hospital. She was only 14. I was 16 when my baby sister died, and it was the hardest thing I ever went through. Losing my dad at such a young age built up my resilience, but that's when I thought I'd have someone by my side forever. Charlie was the one person who always knew how to connect with someone. She was my rock. She was the one person I could be brave for. The person who always knew how to make anyone feel better, and she was gone. Who was I supposed to be brave for now? I moved out when I turned 18. I couldn't bear living in the same house as my sister had died in. I couldn't bear to sleep next to the bed my sister took her last breath in. I vowed when I left I would never live in the country again. I would be happy with my instant coffee and bustling streets. Grandpa died on my 22nd birthday. I hadn't been keeping in touch with him and Mom, so his death came as a surprise to me. I'd vowed never to go back to that farm and face memories that remained there. Even the death of my father figure couldn't draw me back there. So I didn't go. I didn't see the man who raised me get lowered into the ground next to my dead sister. I didn't see Mom's pain as her only son didn't show up to the funeral. The pain must have been too great because she died soon after him. You hear of people dying of grief all the time, but Mom was so strong. After Charlie, I thought she would have gone to the light, but she stayed. She stayed with me and Grandpa. I kind of blame myself for her death, so this time I'm not going to run away. In Grandpa's will, he gave the farm to me and Mom. In turn, she gave it to me if she ever passed. So now I'm the proud owner of my childhood home. I thought maybe this would be the only way to make myself feel better about Charlie. In some sort of way, I was right. I had so many emotions when I moved back. I laughed and cried and even screamed. But I knew that my mom's little boy was home, and for her, I would go to the moon and back. Today was the day of my mom's funeral. I decided to go back to the spot where Charlie and I found the baby bird and walk the path all the way back to the house. I wanted some peace before I saw all three of my family members buried. I guess I must have strayed a little too far off because my leg swept along some bushes on the ground. I didn't think anything of it till I came home that night after the reception. I took off my pants to find a little red bump on my calf. I rubbed my finger on the top of it and it felt hard. My heart skipped a beat As I walked into the bathroom and I grabbed Grandpa's tweezers, I squeezed the scab and lifted it up slowly. What came out of my leg was a little bug, the size of a dime. It squirmed and moved its tiny little legs mechanically. Its pincers snapped as my heart dropped to realize I had been bitten by a tick. I threw the creature in the toilet and flushed. My skin crawled as I bolted to the shower and scrubbed the daylights out of my body. I was hyperventilating when I checked the rest of myself for more of the disgusting parasites. When I was tick-free, I threw my clothes in the dryer, put on clean PJs, and got into bed. I stared at the ceiling for what seemed like hours until finally I drifted into a dreamless sleep. The next few days were anticlimactic. The worst that happened to me was the average migraine and hot flashes. I sort of forgot about the bite until I cut my leg on a piece of wood from the kitchen table. I looked down to inspect the wound and found not blood but a similar circle around the bite where the tick had attached to me a few days earlier. Lying in my bed now, I itch all over. I think I'm going to go to the hospital to get tested. I can't help but think about Charlie. I keep looking around my childhood bedroom, to the closet, to the door, to the vanity in the corner of my room. I keep seeing little dots moving around in the dark. I can't make out what they are, but every time I close my eyes, they seem to scurry just a little bit closer. I think I just need some sleep. Tomorrow, maybe Charlie and I can go adventuring again. I hope you all enjoyed all of our haunted tales this evening. If you would like to discuss any of the stories on tonight's podcast or just chat live with me, join our Discord server. I'm always live on there during and after the podcast every Sunday night starting at 7 p.m. Join our community on our Facebook group page and YouTube channel. If you have a haunting story of your own or artwork and you want to submit it for consideration for the future show, drop me a line on our Reddit page or email address. All our links are below in the description. Special thanks to Darken Mood, Darken_M00D, for all his wonderful art that you can check out on his Reddit page. I want to thank all our brave storytellers, for without them there would be no show. A detailed list of story credits are in the description. But most importantly, I want to thank you, the listener, for taking time out of your day to listen to Haunted Tales from the Old Rocking Chair. I hope you have a wonderful night, and as always, sweet dreams.